When it comes to survival of the fittest, the Homo sapiens certainly won. The Neanderthals lost out in the evolutionary race and they became extinct some 40,000 years ago. But it wasn't an easy victory. For about 50,000 years, Neanderthals and humans competed for dominance in Europe, and there were no holds barred. Both species did whatever was necessary to ensure their own survival, even if that meant killing the other. Some researchers claim that one reason the Neanderthals went extinct is because our ancestors, Homo sapiens, hunted them down. There's evidence to support this theory. For example, many Neanderthal skeletons show signs of trauma consistent with being attacked by another human, and studies have found that Neanderthals who lived in areas where Homo sapiens arrived first tended to die out faster than those in more isolated regions. Some anthropologists even say that the very DNA you carry inside your body may be evidence of this war between species. So let's take a closer look at how Homo sapiens outcompeted and possibly even exterminated the Neanderthals. But before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future videos. Thanks for your support. Now let's go back to the battle of the species. While we think of Neanderthals as primitive brutes, they were actually fairly sophisticated for their time. They made tools, wore clothes, controlled fire, and even practiced burial rituals. In fact, there's evidence that Neanderthals buried their dead with grave goods like jewelry and flowers. This suggests that they had complex beliefs surrounding death, perhaps even an afterlife. Researchers say these sophisticated traits may have been part of what made Neanderthals such formidable competitors. They adapted well to the cold climate of Ice Age Europe, had large brains, and were physically stronger than Homo sapiens. On average, Neanderthals stood about 5 feet 6 inches tall, weighed 200 pounds, and had huge shoulders and powerful arms. We may have been smarter and more flexible, but Neanderthals were big, strong, and tenacious fighters. However, Homo sapiens eventually won out over Neanderthals in Europe. And there are 3 main theories to explain why. First, some researchers believe that Homo sapiens simply outmaneuvered the Neanderthals. As modern humans migrated into new territories, they quickly spread out across the continent. By contrast, most Neanderthal groups lived in small, isolated pockets. This social structure worked well when humans and Neanderthals coexisted in larger regions, but it was less beneficial once Homo sapiens began migrating into smaller territories. Second, some experts say that Homo sapiens were better equipped to deal with the changing climate of the late Ice Age. For example, Neanderthals typically lived in colder, northern climates, while Homo sapiens lived farther south where the weather was warmer. According to this theory, our ancestors may have been better able to adapt to the shifting climate and weather patterns of the late Pleistocene epoch, which lasted from 128,000 to 11,700 years ago. What's more, humans may have benefited from the warming climate as the end of the Ice Age approached. As temperatures rose, forests replaced grasslands, and this change in vegetation would have provided humans with more resources like fruit, nuts, and animals to hunt. Meanwhile, the Neanderthals were ill-equipped to deal with the changes in climate and habitat. And finally, third, some scientists suggest that Homo sapiens exterminated the Neanderthals, or at least heavily reduced their population numbers through warfare and violence. According to this theory, our ancestors may have deliberately hunted Neanderthals, either because they saw them as competition or because they feared the big, strong natives. This theory has its share of skeptics, but there is evidence that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sometimes clashed violently. For example, in 1937, researchers discovered a Neanderthal skeleton in the Iraq War Valley in Uzbekistan with multiple injuries consistent with being attacked by another human. The individual had been stabbed at least 5 times in the back and chest with a sharp stone tool, and one of the wounds had nearly severed his spine. Another study found that 15% of Neanderthal skeletons show signs of traumatic injury. These injuries include arrow and spear wounds, cuts, stabbings, and blunt force trauma. The sheer number of injured skeletons suggests that violence was commonplace in Neanderthal society. It could have been a necessary part of life to survive attacks from predators, rival groups, and possibly even humans. It wasn't just the Neanderthals who suffered violent deaths, however. Research has also uncovered evidence that early modern humans were killed and injured during the late Pleistocene epoch. Some researchers claim that many of these injuries were self-inflicted, meaning that interspecies violence wasn't always necessary for humans to die violent deaths. However, others argue that the injuries could have been caused by Neanderthals or another unknown group of archaic humans. After all, the bones of at least 3 Homo sapiens have been found with wounds consistent with being struck by a Neanderthal spear. Ultimately, we may never know exactly what led to the extinction of the Neanderthals. The fossil record has been destroyed or never existed in the first place. All we have to go on are the physical remains of a few thousand individuals who lived thousands of years ago. But one thing is clear, the Neanderthals didn't go down without a fight. In fact, some researchers believe that Neanderthals fought back against Homo sapiens in more ways than one. One anthropologist even claims that some Neanderthal women may have deliberately mated with Homo sapiens, then used the offspring as hybrid soldiers in a bid to save their species. His theory goes like this. When Neanderthals and humans first encountered each other in Europe, the two species initially lived alongside one another peacefully. But as more Homo sapiens migrated into Neanderthal territory, competition for resources increased. To protect themselves, Neanderthal women began mating with Homo sapiens males, producing children who had the strength of Neanderthals and the intelligence of Homo sapiens. These hybrid babies were the perfect soldiers for waging war against the encroaching humans. Unfortunately for the Neanderthals, this plan backfired. Eventually, it appears as though Homo sapiens completely wiped them out, possibly even using their own hybrid children against them. This theory is controversial to say the least, but it does have some supporters. Researchers say that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens interbred several times throughout history, so there's no reason to believe that it didn't happen in Europe during the late Pleistocene epoch. In fact, genetic testing has revealed that most people alive today have Neanderthal DNA in their blood. This means that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals must have interacted frequently in the past. And it's possible that these interactions weren't always peaceful. All in all, the war between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals was brutal, bloody, and highly effective for humans. We ultimately won the right to become the planet's dominant species, but we can't forget the sacrifices that were made along the way. Perhaps someday in the future, more evidence will turn up that helps us better understand this ancient conflict. But until then, we'll just have to wonder what would have happened if the Neanderthals had won the war. Would Homo sapiens have become extinct, or would we have lived side by side in peace? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe our channel for upcoming videos. You'll love it.